Hey guys, it's Coach Vicki, and today we are going to focus on back rank checkmates. In this video, we will learn what a back rank checkmate is and strategies that will help us find back rank checkmates in slightly more difficult positions. To start off, a back rank checkmate is a special type of checkmate where the king is trapped on the first or last rank of the board and it is attacked by either a rook or a queen. Let's take a look at this first position. We are playing as white, and the opponent's king is at the 8th rank by himself. Its pawns on f7, g7, and h7 are blocking the black king from running away from the 8th rank. So we have a rook on d2 and nothing is in its way, meaning we can move the rook down to the square d8, give a little check, and because the king cannot run away to any of the squares on the 7th rank, this will be checkmate. The first strategy that will help us find back rank checkmates is called counting. Sometimes your opponent will have pieces defending the back rank. However, we can still checkmate our opponent if we have more pieces that can get to the back rank. In this position, our opponent has a rook on the square c8, defending the 8th rank, and we have two rooks lined up on the d file that can get to the square d8. If white plays rook to d8 check, black will be forced to capture, followed by us capturing back with the rook on d1, and this will be checkmate because black has no more pieces that can either capture a rook or defend the king from this check, and the king cannot escape to the squares g7 and h7 because these two pawns are blocking the way. Let's look at this position. It is black to play. Let's take a few seconds and count how many pieces black has that attacks the first rank and the number of pieces white has that defends the first rank. If black has more attackers than white's defenders, it will be checkmate. All right, I hope you guys see that we have a black queen on f2, a black rook on f4, and a black rook on f6, all aiming at the square f1. White only has the bishop on d3 and the rook on c1 that are defending these squares. This means that we can sacrifice our queen by moving it to f1, and no matter what white takes with either the bishop or the rook, we take back, the other piece captures, and finally our rook on f6 captures back, and this will be checkmate because there are no more pieces defending the first rank, and the king cannot escape to the squares g2 and h2 because once again the white pawns are blocking its way. Even though we gave away a queen and a rook for just a rook and a bishop, we have checkmate, and that is better than any material advantage. The next strategy we will be talking about is called removing the guard. Sometimes your opponent has a piece defending the back rank and we want to get rid of it no matter what if we want checkmate. In this position, the rook on g8 is guarding the black king and keeping it away from any danger. Let's take a few seconds to figure out how we can get rid of the black rook so we can eventually checkmate. Okay, I hope you guys found the very amazing queen sacrifice, queen captures g8 check. The king has to take back, and now we follow up with rook on c1 all the way down the board to the square c8, give a check, and the queen has to block. We will capture the queen with our rook, and this is checkmate because the king cannot run away to the squares g7 and h7 because of the pawns. It also cannot run to the square f7 because our bishop on h5 is controlling that square. Let's look at this example. We are playing as black and white has one rook on the first rank, but none of our pieces are attacking that rook. However, if we distract the rook and it moves away from the square d1, we can back rank checkmate the white king by bringing our own pieces to the first rank. Take a few seconds and think about how we can distract or force the d1 rook away from the first rank. All right, I hope you guys saw that our queen is not attacking the d1 rook, but actually the d4 rook. If we capture this rook on d4 and the rook takes, this rook is no longer on the first rank, so that means we can bring our c8 rook down the board, give a little check, the rook has to come back, we capture, the queen has to block, and we capture, and this will be checkmate. Let's go back for a second. All right, so if we capture the rook and this rook does not take our queen and moves away, let's say, that's okay. We will be up a rook, and this will make it really easy for black to win this game later on. The third strategy we will be talking about is called opening the file. Sometimes our own pieces are in the way of letting us use an open file to attack the king, and we all know that in order to backrank checkmate our opponent, we need to get rid of all the pieces that are in the way. So in this position, we are playing from the black side, and our rook on a8 is almost on an open file, but our knight on a5 is blocking the way. If our knight was not there, rook a1 would be instant checkmate. However, if we simply move our knight to a safe square like b7, our own king might be attacked, or the white king can choose to defend the a1 square, and we will not be able to checkmate really easily. This means that we need to find a very quick way to get this a5 knight out of the way, so our rook can come down the board and deliver checkmate. Once again, let's take a few seconds and find a fast way to get that knight out of the way. Okay, it's time to test your ability to see forcing moves. One of the most forcing moves in chess are checks. The knight can give a check on the square b3. If the king simply runs away to the square b1, rook a1 will be checkmate. Note that the king cannot capture our rook because our knight is defending our rook on a1. If white chooses to capture our knight with the c2 pawn, rook a1 will still be checkmate because the king is way too far to capture our rook, and the king cannot run away to the escape square c2 because our bishop on f5 is once again controlling this diagonal. This next example is slightly harder, but we will still use the same idea of trying to find ways to open up the file for our rook. In this position, it is white to play. Remember to always look at checks first so we can predict what our opponent might do next. Let's take a few seconds and think about what the winning combination here is. Okay, so we know that we need to get our a1 rook somehow to the back rank so we can checkmate the enemy king. Right now, if we move our rook directly to the square a8, this bishop is blocking our way, and even though this rook cannot defend the bishop, the black king can go to f7, and it's really hard to get this bishop out of the way, and if we can't do that, it will not be checkmate really easily. So instead, we have to look at a very strong move that opens another file. If you guys guessed the move f7 check, you guys are correct. The trick here is that if the bishop captures, now we can go to the square a8, and now that the bishop is taking the f7 square, the king cannot escape, and instead the bishop has to go back. We take the bishop with check. The king might look like it's running, but after rook f8 check, this is actually checkmate because all of these pawns are stopping the king from running away, and our bishop on h6 is doing a really good job controlling the g7 square and defending our rook. Our rook, on the other hand, is doing a super good job attacking the king and controlling the f6, g8, and e8 squares. Let's look at another option Black has. If the king goes to h8, we can either promote to a queen or a rook, or we can even capture this bishop and promote to a queen or a rook, and this would be checkmate. Now the last option we have to look at is if the king captures the f7 pawn. And this is where we really take advantage of this newly open file we have created by going to rook f1 check. The king cannot go to these squares because its pieces are taking the space, and the king can only go to g8. And now we continue by going rook f8 checkmate. Notice that our bishop is doing a really good job controlling this diagonal, stopping the king from going to g7 and protecting our rook as well. And this is checkmate once again. The last strategy we will be looking at is how to control our opponent's escape squares. Sometimes our opponent's king's pawns are not completely blocking the enemy king from running away. In that case, we would have to use other pieces to take away these escape squares and keep the king trapped at the back rank. In this position, our rook on e1 is on an open file, and the black king has g7 as an escape square. In order to prevent the king from escaping, the first move white needs to play is bishop to h6 check, a forcing move that not only controls the g7 square, but also forces the king to run away to the squares g8, and after rook to e8 check, the bishop has to retreat to f8, and after we take the bishop with our rook, this will be checkmate. Another move some people might consider is moving the bishop to b2 actually. It controls the square g7, but this is not a very forcing move, and we cannot get our rook anywhere near the back rank immediately because the king is actually guarding the square. So instead, we always try to look at forcing moves first. So bishop h6, king has to run, rook e8, bishop protect, rook captures bishop, and this will be checkmate. This is the last position we will be looking at in this video. In this position, we are playing as black, and the first thing to notice is that white is actually up a rook, but the king is pretty weak, and we have a rook and a queen on the e file that can easily go to e1 to give a check. However, the king has g2 as an escape square. This one might be a little tricky, so pause the video if you need more time, but let's take a few seconds to think about how we can have our pieces work together and deliver a back rank checkmate in a couple of moves. All right, let's see if you guys got it. The winning combination starts with queen e1 check, forcing the king to move to g2. And now the very crucial queen f1 check, a queen sacrifice, getting the king away from the g2 square. And now we follow up with bishop to h3 check, taking away this escape square, forcing the king to run to g1 because our rook is still controlling the e file. And after king g1, our rook comes down the board, and this will be checkmate. Notice how every move starting from queen e1 comes with a check. This is really important because we want every move to be forcing. Bishop h3 check, taking away the square, forcing the king to go to g1. Rook e1 checkmate. All of these moves are very precise because each move is a very forcing check. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned some new tricks about back rank checkmates that you will hopefully be able to use in your own games.